Apparently, humanity will trust anything as long as someone in a lab coat says it with confidence. We've believed cures that don't work, dangers that don't exist, and facts doctors quietly roll their eyes at. And somehow, the stupidest ones aren't even the worst yet. 1. Nothing captures the optimism of human ignorance quite like adults confidently swallowing fist-sized vitamin C tablets as if megadosing citrus were a legally recognized medical shield. Entire households still treat these chalky orange horse pills like medieval amulets that must be consumed the moment someone sneezes within a 3-mile radius, as though the molecules will sprint into battle screaming, "Not today, germs," while reputable science stands quietly in the corner, reminding everyone that your kidneys simply dump the excess into your personal plumbing system. Yet, people lovingly cling to the myth because nothing feels more heroic than imagining yourself defeating a virus by eating enough vitamins to poison a small goat. And whenever someone inevitably gets sick anyway, the explanation is never, "the myth is nonsense," but rather, "you didn't take enough," turning vitamin C into the world's least effective subscription-based fantasy novel where the plot never advances and everyone still ends up coughing on the couch. 2. Somewhere in the collective medical imagination lives the immortal fantasy that shaving your head will make hair grow back thicker, as if follicles rise from the scalp like vengeful lawn grass plotting revenge for being mowed. And parents continue teaching this folklore with the confidence of seasoned barbers, despite every dermatologist begging humanity to stop spreading it. Meanwhile, billions of freshly shorn teenagers stare in the mirror, expecting to wake up looking like a failed lumberjack, only to discover their hair has defied prophecy and returned exactly as unimpressive as before, because shaving has as much effect on follicle density as yelling at a houseplant affects its GPA. Yet the myth persists, fueled by generations of people who mistake visible stubble for genetic transformation, which is like assuming a car becomes faster because you washed it. And the best part is watching grown adults argue about this myth with the same energy usually reserved for custody battles or reality TV finals. 3. The human mind has proudly preserved the idea that cracking your knuckles summons the spirit of early-onset arthritis, as though joints are fragile ceramic heirlooms that retaliate when you annoy them. Entire families theatrically gasp when someone pops a knuckle, convinced they've just witnessed the opening scene of a medical tragedy, even though the sound is literally just bubbles of gas collapsing like microscopic whoopee cushions. Still, the myth thrives because nothing delights humans quite like policing each other's harmless habits under the banner of fake science, and parents wield this myth like emotional blackmail. Keep cracking and you'll regret it in 30 years. A wonderfully unfalsifiable timeline that ensures they never have to defend it. Meanwhile, actual doctors patiently explain the harmless mechanics while their audience nods politely, fully committed to believing Grandma June's folklore over decades of research. Because why trust medical consensus when you can trust the stern warning of someone who thinks Wi-Fi causes migraines? 4. The cultural fear of wet hair equals instant pneumonia continues to survive like a cockroach at the apocalypse, with parents still shrieking at damp-headed teens as if pneumonia lurks behind the sofa like a Victorian ghost, waiting to pounce on anyone who dared skip the blow-dryer. The myth paints bacteria as finicky creatures requiring precise meteorological conditions before launching an attack, which is hilarious, considering the real pathogens are out there thriving in environments far more exciting than cool breeze touches slightly moist scalp. But the myth provides such emotional satisfaction, like scolding a child for cosmic crimes against warmth, that it has become a sacred tradition. And every winter, someone's aunt confidently explains how Gregory caught pneumonia after stepping outside for 14 seconds, completely ignoring the entire immune system, germ theory, and basic logic, because nothing must interfere with the generational joy of blaming disease on hairstyles instead of microbes. 5. Nothing says humanity refuses to evolve like the continued worship of detox cleanses, those magical potions supposedly designed to flush toxins from your body, despite nobody being able to identify said toxins beyond vague references that sound like rejected Pokemon. People willingly starve themselves, chug lemon sludge, and treat their blender like a spiritual confessional, believing their liver, the organ literally built for detoxing, is asleep on the job and needs motivational juice. The best part is watching someone proudly declare themselves reborn after 3 days of drinking liquefied lawn clippings, radiating the smug confidence of a person who believes kale has mystical exorcism properties. And meanwhile, their actual organs continue functioning exactly as before, unimpressed by the theatrical sacrifice. But the myth lives on because nothing feels more heroic than pretending you've purged evil molecules through $11 celery water instead of acknowledging you just needed fiber and a nap. 6. Few myths have wasted more human potential than the idea that we only use 10% of our brains, as if the remaining 90% is a luxury suite occupied by untapped psychic powers lounging on beanbags while neurons handle all the boring tasks. The notion suggests that humans are walking around with storage capacity that rivals abandoned office buildings, and all it takes is the right inspirational quote to activate superhuman genius. Meanwhile, actual neuroscientists spend their careers gently reminding everyone that the brain doesn't run on a free trial mode. But the myth remains immortal because it flatters people into imagining they're one motivational poster away from bending spoons with their minds. The irony is that the people who insist they're ready to unlock hidden brain zones often demonstrate they're already using 100% of their available processing power just to form the sentence, making the myth less of an inspiration and more of a deeply generous assumption. 7. The myth that sugar makes kids hyperactive has become such a foundational parenting belief that it might as well be carved into playground stone tablets, despite decades of studies screaming, "No, it doesn't," while exhausted adults plug their ears and interpret every child's excitement as definitive proof that glucose is basically rocket fuel. The logic apparently assumes children exist in a dormant, peaceful state until a cupcake awakens their inner chaos gremlin, when in reality kids achieve hyperactivity simply by existing near anything fun or forbidden. But the myth offers such a comforting scapegoat. It was the sugar, not the parenting, that society clings to it with religious fervor, and every birthday party becomes a scientific reenactment where parents watch toddlers sprint in circles and blame the frosting, instead of the fact that 12 small humans are together in one room performing an unregulated reenactment of Lord of the Flies. 8. The conviction that sitting too close to the TV ruins your eyes has haunted generations like a ghost funded by the eyewear industry, with parents acting as if the television emits invisible ocular death rays calibrated to vaporize retinas at a range of less than 2 feet. In truth, the only genuine threat is the contorted neck posture children adopt while trying to become one with the screen. But logic never stood a chance once the myth established itself as a universal scolding ritual. Entire households enforce seating zones marked by imaginary radiation boundaries, warning kids to back up as though moving 5 inches would reverse impending blindness. Meanwhile, the real cause of eye strain is simply staring at anything for too long. But nobody wants a boring explanation when you can have a dramatic cautionary tale that makes watching cartoons feel like navigating a minefield of potential ophthalmological doom. 9. The myth that swimming after eating guarantees an instant drowning episode continues to survive with the determination of a villain in a slasher movie. Supposedly, the human stomach seizes control of your limbs the moment you digest a sandwich, dragging you into the watery abyss like some vindictive inner kraken. Parents everywhere recite the sacred wait 30 minutes rule as if violating the timeline would trigger a federal emergency broadcast, despite the glaring absence of any medical evidence supporting this gastrointestinal horror story. Children obediently sit poolside, glaring at clocks like prisoners awaiting parole, while their caregivers enforce the rule with the same solemn authority as ancient priests guarding forbidden rituals. And yet, year after year, doctors remind the world that digestion does not transform swimmers into helpless mannequins. But the myth refuses to die because adults enjoy the fleeting power of delaying fun under the guise of safety. 10. Nothing demonstrates humanity's commitment to scientific confusion, like the belief that cold weather itself causes colds, as if viruses politely hibernate in summer and emerge the moment temperatures drop below light jacket required. People still behave as though the atmosphere develops malicious intentions in November, convinced a gust of chilly wind contains the power to rearrange their respiratory system. Meanwhile, the actual culprits, viruses, must be baffled, watching humans blame winter for their actions like criminals blaming the weather report, despite every medical explanation pointing out that people simply crowd indoors more and share germs like limited edition collectibles. The myth persists because it's far more satisfying to accuse Mother Nature of personal attacks than to admit someone at work coughed directly into the communal coffee maker. 11. The belief that eating bread crust makes you grow taller is one of those vintage myths that refuses to retire gracefully, lingering in households like an outdated appliance nobody throws away because it still kind of works. Parents have delivered this sage wisdom with the solemn authority of Olympic coaches, insisting the crust contains special height-boosting powers, as if gluten were a secret performance-enhancing drug reserved for children brave enough to chew the crispy ends. Meanwhile, the actual nutritional difference between crust and bread is about as exciting as watching paint dry on beige wallpaper. Yet generations of kids were threatened, bribed, or philosophically bullied into consuming it anyway. The real mystery isn't why the myth exists. It's why anyone believed it long enough for thousands of fully grown adults to remember it with the same confusion usually reserved for cult documentaries. 12. One of humanity's favorite medical superstitions is the idea that if you swallow gum, it stays in your stomach for 7 years, presumably living rent-free like the world's least productive tenant. Parents wield this myth like a psychological cattle prod, warning children that their digestive tract will become a bubblegum mausoleum. Even though the human body has absolutely no interest in hosting a long-term chewing gum Airbnb. The myth persists because it offers such delightfully vivid imagery, tiny pink clumps haunting your intestines like sticky ghosts. But in reality, gum passes through the system with all the ceremony of a bored tourist. Still, the lie continues because it gives adults one rare moment where they can terrify children into not behaving like feral vending machines. And honestly, who can resist that power? 13. The idea that carrots give you night vision remains one of the most successful nutritional hoaxes ever adopted, inspiring entire generations to swallow orange vegetables with the same determination normally reserved for heroic sacrifices, all while imagining their eyes gradually upgrading to military-grade night goggles. Parents preach the myth with unwavering conviction, turning dinner tables into propaganda centers where children choke down carrots in hopes of unlocking nocturnal superpowers. Unfortunately for the hopeful masses, carrots do not transform humans into owls, bats, or bargain bin superheroes. But the myth remains beloved because it makes vegetables sound less like plants and more like magical equipment from a fantasy RPG. Doctors have clarified the truth countless times, but the legend is simply too charming to kill. And so children continue squinting into darkness waiting for their vision boost to load like buggy software. 14. Few myths are more theatrical than the belief that touching a toad will give you warts, as though amphibians spend their days scheming biological pranks on unsuspecting humans. Entire playground generations treated toads like biological landmines, avoiding them with the dramatic caution usually reserved for radioactive waste, despite the fact that warts come from human viruses, not mischievous swamp creatures. Still, parents and teachers repeated the myth with evangelical enthusiasm, transforming small, harmless animals into alleged dermatological threats. Meanwhile, actual toads simply sat there blinking slowly, confused as to why their social reputation resembled that of a contagious villain. But the myth continues because it provides a delightfully simple explanation for an otherwise unexciting skin condition. And humans will always prefer blaming wildlife over accepting that viruses are just annoyingly democratic. 15. The myth that you should put butter on a burn remains one of the most baffling relics of household medicine, treating a damaged patch of skin like an artisanal baguette that needs glazing. Generations of well-meaning relatives have rushed to the fridge during emergencies, convinced that dairy products possess mystical healing properties instead of, trapping heat against the wound like a culinary torture device. The ritual is especially absurd because it often results in the patient smelling like a half-melted croissant while their burn quietly worsens. And yet, the practice persisted for decades because it feels proactive and comforting. Two adjectives that medical accuracy does not always provide. Doctors beg humanity to stop greasing its injuries, but many households still cling to the notion that if butter can improve popcorn, surely it can improve second-degree burns, proving once again that culinary instinct should never be confused with medical wisdom. 16. The long-standing belief that you must drink 8 glasses of water a day still marches through society like an unexamined family heirloom, inspiring adults to lug around gallon jugs as if hydration were a competitive sport and dehydration a lurking assassin. People cling to this myth with heroic devotion, convinced their body operates on a strict internal water quota like a bureaucratic office that closes at 5, completely ignoring the fact that most foods already contain water and the human body is perfectly capable of regulating thirst without external micromanagement. Yet devotees of the 8 times 8 rule behave as though their kidneys will file formal complaints if they fail to meet daily quotas, and they judge anyone who drinks too little with the same alarm normally reserved for fire hazards. The truth, that hydration needs vary wildly and forcibly. Drowning yourself in water does not transform you into a glowing wellness demigod. Never slows the myth down, because drinking arbitrary amounts of water gives people the illusion of being health geniuses without requiring any actual thought. 17. The myth that cracking your back at home is basically the same thing as an expert chiropractic adjustment remains one of humanity's boldest acts of optimism, as people happily twist themselves into shapes that resemble malfunctioning IKEA furniture while declaring they've fixed their spine, all while ignoring every professional who gently insists that vertebrae are not meant to be treated like bubble wrap. But the myth persists because nothing feels more triumphant than hearing a loud pop and assuming you've just corrected years of ergonomic sins rather than simply forcing gas from joints like a human soda bottle. Meanwhile, those who take the myth too far end up performing homespun maneuvers that look like deleted scenes from a martial arts movie performed by sleepy office workers, convinced they're opening up their alignment instead of courting mild disaster. The whole ritual thrives because people adore dramatic sound effects that make them feel like their skeleton is doing something productive for once, even if the only real achievement is momentarily distracting themselves from the consequences of hunching over a laptop since 2009. 18. The belief that starving a fever is a medically sound strategy continues to survive, mostly because humans possess a shocking capacity to treat illness like a real-time strategy game where food apparently acts as enemy reinforcements. People proudly deny themselves meals in the name of helping the body fight, as though the immune system operates on some type of intermittent fasting challenge and will reward your self-imposed hunger strike with bonus healing points. Meanwhile, actual biology quietly watches this theater unfold, baffled that humans think depriving themselves of calories during an energy-intensive immune response could possibly speed recovery. But the myth flourishes because it gives the illusion of doing something dramatic, and nothing feels more dramatically self-sacrificial than glaring at a bowl of soup like it's plotting your downfall. Eventually, the hungry patient concludes the illness has won, lies down in defeat, and the rest of the household must pretend this wasn't entirely predictable, all because someone tried to fight viruses with the power of stubbornness and an empty stomach. 19. The bizarre conviction that turning on a fan while you sleep will somehow kill you, an idea lovingly dubbed fan death in certain corners of the world, still drifts through the human psyche like an urban legend that refuses to grow up. People genuinely fear that a rotating piece of plastic will summon hypothermia, steal oxygen, or otherwise conspire to eliminate them during peaceful slumber, as if bedroom appliances harbor quiet, murderous ambition. Fans, which typically spend their lives battling stale air and boredom, are suddenly accused of plotting elaborate assassinations, and yet this myth is treated with the seriousness of a meteorological prophecy. Medical science has explained countless times that fans are merely tools, not stealthy environmental hitmen. But the story persists because humans adore imagining they are living in low-budget horror films where the villain is cheap home electronics. It's hard not to admire a mythology where a household object becomes a silent but deadly force, even though the closest thing it poses to danger is collecting enough dust to judge your cleaning habits. 20. The unwavering myth that you lose most of your body heat through your head has inspired generations of adults to treat winter like a balding emergency, wrapping their skulls in layers of knit protection while leaving the rest of their bodies exposed like confused fashion statements. The idea suggests that the human head functions as a thermal escape hatch, leaking warmth like a defective chimney, and people cling to this explanation with heartfelt devotion because it gives their favorite beanie the heroic status of medical equipment. But proportionally, heat simply escapes through whatever part of the body you don't cover, which means your head is no more special than your elbows, your shins, or your tragically unprotected midriff. Still, the myth thrives, especially among people who relish the chance to shame others for hatlessness while ignoring their own freezing ankles. And the entire ritual persists because nothing feels more scientifically authoritative than yelling, "Put a hat on," while pretending the rest of the laws of thermodynamics don't exist. 21. The myth that microwaves destroy nutrients continues to haunt kitchen conversations like a misunderstood ghost, even though microwaving is actually one of the gentlest cooking methods. But try explaining that to someone who treats magnets and radiation like interchangeable cosmic forces. People dramatically recoil from microwave-heated vegetables, as though the machine has extracted their vitamins and filed them under "too lazy to cook." Yet they'll cheerfully deep-fry a zucchini into oblivion without a second thought. The myth survives because it slots perfectly into humanity's favorite genre of fiction. Technology is secretly trying to kill us, especially if it hums and has a window. Meanwhile, nutritionists keep sighing into their coffee as they explain that nutrient loss comes from overcooking, not invisible microwave wizardry. But humans cherish the drama of imagining their leftover lasagna has been stripped of moral value by electromagnetic betrayal. It's a comforting story where kitchen appliances are the villains, not the cooking methods humans actually get wrong. 22. The persistent belief that if it burns, it's working has turned over-the-counter medical products into instruments of masochism, with people dousing wounds in alcohol or peroxide purely for the theatrical sting, convinced the bubbling pain is proof of heroic healing rather than a sign they're irritating already damaged tissue. This myth is the medical equivalent of believing your car runs better when you yell at it. Yet millions continue to chase the satisfaction of a dramatic hiss or sizzle as though pain were a reliable diagnostic tool. Entire households treat peroxide foam like mystical proof of disinfecting magic, ignoring the fact that it bubbles on anything, including surfaces containing zero bacteria. But the spectacle is so emotionally gratifying that logic never has a chance. So humans continue torturing themselves for the sweet validation of suffering, proudly wincing through a procedure that does little more than entertain the wound like a mildly chaotic chemistry experiment. 23. The myth that you can sweat out toxins through exercise or saunas still thrives with the passion of a fitness cult, convincing people that sweating buckets is equivalent to draining sin from their pores, even though sweat exists primarily to cool your body and not to carry out complicated detox negotiations. But enthusiasts insist that each droplet contains the ghosts of bad food decisions, toxic friendships, and questionable margarita nights, while doctors calmly explain that the liver and kidneys handle toxins, not your gym membership. Still, the myth persists because sweating feels productive, and humans adore the illusion that discomfort equals cleansing. So gyms continue marketing detox sessions, while participants leave glowing with the smug triumph of people convinced they've outwitted their own biology. Little do they realize their sweat is mostly water and salt, not the tortured exit route of their imagined molecular sins. 24. The charmingly misguided belief that spicy food causes ulcers has bullied countless chili lovers into bland culinary exile. All because somewhere along the way, people decided that hot peppers behave like tiny gastrointestinal arsonists. The reality, supported by the inconvenient villain known as bacteria, has been shouted by doctors for decades. But the myth remains because the idea of a jalapeno torching your insides is simply too vivid for the human imagination to resist. People love blaming visible, dramatic culprits rather than invisible microbes. So, spicy foods get framed like guilty pyrotechnicians while the real criminal quietly replicates in the background. Meanwhile, cultures that routinely eat extremely spicy meals continue going about their lives ulcer-free, looking at this myth with the polite confusion usually reserved for tourists who microwave metal. But the story persists because it reinforces humanity's favorite conclusion: if something feels fiery, it must be medically dangerous. 25. The belief that touching cold metal, like a doorknob, will give you the flu has spread through households with astonishing enthusiasm, even though viruses cannot magically teleport from steel into your bloodstream without a delivery mechanism. Still, people behave as though winter turns every public surface into a biological landmine, recoiling from doorknobs like they're auditioning for a horror movie about possessed hardware. The myth persists because the timing lines up. Cold weather, cold metal, cold symptoms. But correlation isn't causation. though that small detail has never stopped humans from crafting dramatic stories about everyday objects conspiring against them. Meanwhile, genuine transmission comes from other humans breathing, sneezing, and existing in your vicinity. But blaming metal feels so much less personal. So doorknobs, ever stoic, continue being accused of crimes they did not commit, quietly enduring their wrongful reputation as winter's invisible hitmen. 26. The idea that natural remedies are automatically safer has fueled endless marketplaces full of plants, powders, and potions lovingly embraced by people who believe that nature would never betray them, despite nature's well-documented track record of producing venom, poison, allergens, and microorganisms that actively despise us. Yet the myth holds strong because humans romanticize anything that looks rustic or comes in a brown glass bottle with a leafy label, assuming it must be kinder to the body than medications that actually require regulation. The irony is that some of the most toxic substances known to science grow cheerfully in forests and gardens, but enthusiasts continue sipping untested concoctions with the serene confidence of medieval alchemists, insisting that it's natural, while ignoring that arsenic, hemlock, and hurricanes are also natural. The myth thrives because humans love the idea of gentle earth magic, even when that magic occasionally punches back. 27. The stubborn myth that rubbing alcohol cools down a fevered child faster than proper care has created generations of anxious adults sprinting toward cabinets in a panic, splashing alcohol onto skin as though they're marinating a medical emergency, oblivious to the fact that this outdated practice can actually be dangerous. The belief thrives because alcohol evaporates quickly, producing a dramatic chill that tricks caregivers into thinking they've performed a heroic intervention, when in reality they've simply startled the skin while contributing precisely zero meaningful medical benefit. Meanwhile, professionals quietly beg people to stop reenacting this domestic chemistry experiment. But the myth is too emotionally satisfying to disappear. After all, nothing makes a worried adult feel more accomplished than participating in a ritual that looks scientific, smells medicinal, and provides instant sensory feedback. Sadly, theatrics are not treatment, but humanity rarely lets biology ruin a dramatic household tradition. 28. The myth that sunscreen is only necessary at the beach or during summer has turned entire populations into reluctant human raisin experiments, with people acting as though the sun politely schedules its harmful rays exclusively for poolside vacations. On cloudy days, individuals walk proudly outside with the confidence of people who believe the atmosphere has switched to gentle mode, ignoring the invisible ultraviolet nonsense barreling toward their skin like a microscopic stampede. The myth persists because applying sunscreen feels like homework, and avoiding it feels like rebellion with no immediate consequences, which is humanity's favorite kind of rebellion. Meanwhile, dermatologists continue issuing bleak warnings that bounce off society like ping-pong balls hitting a concrete wall, and people stroll onward, content in their sun denial, destined to reenact this dance every year until they finally accept that UV rays don't take personal instructions. 29. The myth that eggs are either a nutritional superhero or a cholesterol grenade depending on the decade lives on as one of nutrition's most unstable soap operas, with people whiplashed by constant flip-flops in public understanding. Some treat eggs like forbidden biochemical weapons, refusing even to look at an omelet without feeling morally compromised, while others behave as though eggs alone could power the human species into immortality. The truth is hilariously mild compared to the drama, but humans crave narratives with strong plot twists, so eggs remain trapped in an eternal identity crisis. Vilified one year, celebrated the next, all while chickens watch this saga unfold with the weary resignation of creatures who know their dietary reputation changes more often than fashion trends. The myth stays alive because nothing excites people more than arguing passionately about foods that are, frankly, just breakfast. 30. The myth that you can boost your immune system with vague lifestyle tricks continues to dominate wellness conversations, turning human biology into a fictional video game where you supposedly upgrade your immune stats by purchasing colorful supplements or drinking a suspiciously green smoothie. The idea suggests the immune system is a lazy coworker who needs motivational speeches instead of a complex network that already works tirelessly to keep you alive. Yet, people flock to anything labeled immune boosting with the enthusiasm of hobbyists collecting rare trading cards, proudly believing they've achieved some sort of internal power-up. Meanwhile, scientists sigh deeply and explain for the thousandth time that you don't want your immune system boosted, because that would mean autoimmune chaos. But nuance stands no chance against the marketing magic of brightly labeled powders promising superhero immunity. Humans continue chasing imaginary upgrades instead of appreciating the immune system they already have, flawed yet impressively stubborn. 31. The enduring myth that fish oil supplements make you instantly smarter or more focused has convinced countless adults to swallow capsules the size of torpedoes, all while imagining their brains gleaming with newfound brilliance like freshly polished hard drives. People cling to this myth because the fantasy of becoming mentally sharper without effort is irresistible, especially when the alternative is sleep, hydration, or managing stress, none of which come in convenient pill form. The truth is more nuanced and far less glamorous, but nuance rarely appears on supplement bottles, so the myth thrives among hopeful customers who view fish oil as a mental cheat code. Meanwhile, grocery stores proudly display shelves of oily brain potions promising focus, clarity, and possibly mild disappointment. But the dream persists because nothing captures human aspiration quite like hoping intelligence can be swallowed whole with a glass of tap water. And that's your tour through humanity's medical genius, or whatever we're calling this. Drop your favorite myth, or the dumbest one, in the comments. Go on, diagnose the chaos yourself.